Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Now, enjoy. The air was heavy with noise, smoke, and movement. Cars honked like they were chasing something invisible, people shouted from every corner, and sellers waved snacks and phone chargers like weapons of survival. Lagos didn't wait for anyone. It moved fast, and if you weren't paying attention, it would leave you behind. Obiora stood at the edge of the road, dragging a faded duffel bag behind him. Sweat soaked the back of his neck, and his shirt clung to his chest. He had been in Lagos for just 2 days, and already, the city had chewed him up and spat him into confusion. He came with dreams, big ones: get a job, find a house, send money to his mother in Enugu. But so far, the only thing he had found was how cruel a big city could be when you had no one. His phone had died somewhere between Ojalegba and the place the bus conductor shouted as Ikeja under bridge. Obiora didn't even know where that was. He'd followed the crowd, thinking someone might look like they knew what they were doing. But everyone in Lagos looked like that, confident, like they had a plan. Only Obiora stood there now, out of breath, broke, and with nowhere to sleep. He dragged his bag toward a bench and sat a day. His stomach groaned in protest. He had eaten only once yesterday, 2 wraps of cold moi moi from a woman by the roadside, and since then, nothing. As the evening grew darker, the noise didn't stop. If anything, it got louder. Then she came. She moved through the crowd like she wasn't really there, her bare feet careful on the pavement. Her wrapper was old and dusty, and a faded scarf wrapped around her head. In one hand she held a dirty bowl. People passed her like wind, they didn't see her. Or maybe they didn't care. She stopped in front of Obiora and stared at him. He looked up, startled. She wasn't pretty in the usual way. There was something different. Something sharp behind her quietness. Her eyes held a storm, even though her face looked tired. "You dey hungry?" she asked, her voice small but clear. Obiora blinked. He didn't speak. The girl set her bowl on the ground and brought out a small nylon with puff. Maybe 4 or 5 pieces. She handed it to him without waiting. Obiora took it slowly. "Why are you giving me?" "Because you look worse than me." He almost laughed. "Almost. What's your name?" he asked. "Amarachi," she said, picking her bowl back up. "I'm Obiora." She nodded, turned, and walked away without saying another word. He watched her until the crowd swallowed her again. And for the first time since he got to Lagos, something in him felt seen. That night, Obiora slept under a broken kiosk. The puff long gone, but the name Amarachi stayed with him like a song he didn't know he needed. And Lagos kept moving, loud and wild. But something had shifted. Obiora didn't feel completely lost anymore. Not with a stranger like her walking around. Not with someone who gave him food when she had nothing. Tomorrow, he would look for her. Morning came slow and heavy with heat. Obiora woke up stiff, the cold pavement biting through his thin clothes. His throat was dry, and his stomach twisted with hunger. The city was already alive, with shouting voices, the sound of engines, and the chatter of hawkers. He stood up and rubbed his eyes, hoping to find Amarachi somewhere nearby. He asked a few people if they had seen the girl with the dusty wrapper and the bowl, but no one seemed to know. The city swallowed her again. Obiora wandered through narrow streets where walls were stained with years of rain and dust. He passed children playing football with a ragged ball, old men sitting under trees that gave little shade, and women selling akara in makeshift stalls. Lagos was rough, but it was also full of stories he didn't understand yet. By midday, he found himself near a busy junction where beggars crowded around the traffic lights, each trying to catch a glimpse of a generous hand. Among them, he saw Amarachi sitting quietly in a corner, her eyes fixed on the ground. She looked smaller somehow, tired beyond words. Obiora approached slowly. "Amarachi," he called softly. She looked up, surprise flashing across her face. "Obiora," she said, voice like a whisper. He sat beside her. "How do you do this every day?" How do you stay strong? She shrugged and smiled faintly. You learn to hide inside yourself. No one cares if you break. Obiora felt a tight ache in his chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled naira note. Here. For today. She hesitated but took it. They sat together for a long moment, the noise of Lagos fading between them. Why are you here? Obiora asked. Not just the street, but Lagos. Amarachi looked away. I was looking for someone once. But I lost more than I found. Obiora didn't push. Some stories weren't ready to be told. As the sun dipped low again, Amarachi stood up, wiping dust from her skirt. I have to go, she said. Wait, Obiora said quickly. Can I walk with you? She nodded, and side by side, they disappeared into the crowd, two lost souls finding a small piece of hope in the chaos of Lagos. Night fell fast, swallowing the streets in shadows and the sound of distant music from open windows. Obiora and Amarachi walked without speaking much. The city's noise softened, but the air still held a restless energy that made Obiora's heart beat unevenly. They reached a narrow alley where a few old houses leaned against each other like tired friends. Amarachi stopped in front of one, knocking lightly on a wooden door cracked from years of weather. The door creaked open, and a woman with silver hair and kind eyes peered out. She smiled when she saw Amarachi. Mama Ngozi, Amarachi said softly. The woman stepped aside, letting them in. Inside was warm but plain, a small living room with a worn-out sofa and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The smell of cooking filled the air. Obiora felt out of place but didn't move. Mama Ngozi looked at him, nodding gently. You're the one Amarachi talks about. Obiora swallowed, unsure what to say. Mama Ngozi went to the kitchen and returned with a plate of jollof rice and some water. You must eat, she said. Obiora took the plate, surprise mixing with gratitude. As he ate, Amarachi sat quietly, watching him. After a while, Obiora gathered courage. Why do you live like this, Amarachi? You could leave this street. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm waiting for something. Or maybe someone. Obiora wanted to ask more, but Mama Ngozi's voice interrupted. You have a good heart, Obiora. Lagos will try to break you, but people like you and Amarachi, you carry the city in your bones. The words settled softly inside him, like a gentle promise. Later, when he was about to leave, Amarachi touched his arm. Stay a little longer. Lagos is easier when you're not alone. Obiora looked at her, feeling something shift deep inside. Maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to belong. The next morning, Lagos was already loud before the sun showed its face. Obiora woke on the threadbare mattress Mama Ngozi had given him, the smell of frying plantains drifting in from the kitchen. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, feeling a strange mix of hope and worry. Downstairs, Amarachi was already busy sweeping the small courtyard. Her movements were quiet but steady, like she carried a secret she couldn't shake off. Obiora watched her from the doorway, noticing the way the light caught the edges of her face. He stepped outside and cleared his throat. Amarachi, how long have you lived here? He asked. She paused and smiled, a little sad. Since I was a child. This place, it's all I have. Obiora nodded, trying to understand. Lagos could be a cage, especially for people like her. He hesitated, then said, You never told me why you're here on the streets. Amarachi looked away, her eyes fixed on the cracked ground. After a long silence, she finally spoke. My family, they're gone. I have nowhere else to go. Obiora's chest tightened. He wanted to say something that would fix everything, but the truth was heavier than words. I don't have much, he said softly. But I want to help. Maybe we can find a way out of this, together. Amarachi looked up, meeting his gaze. For the first time, her eyes were open, clear, and trusting. Thank you, Obiora. At that moment, the city's noise felt a little softer, as if Lagos itself was listening. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring, but for now, they had found something rare in the chaos, a small piece of hope. Days slipped by, each one folding into the next like pages in a book neither of them wanted to end. Obiora found small jobs, carrying goods at the market, running errands, anything to put food on the table. Amarachi stayed close, her quiet presence a steady comfort against the city's restless beat. One afternoon, as the sun leaned low, Obiora returned with a few bags of groceries. He found Amarachi sitting on the steps outside Mermangose's house, counting coins she had gathered from her bowl. Her hands trembled slightly. He sat beside her, placing the bags down gently. "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked. She looked up, eyes tired but soft. "It's not just about the money," Amarachi said. "It's about surviving. About feeling like I matter, even if just a little." Obiora nodded, understanding more than he could say. That evening, as the city settled into its usual hum, Amarachi pulled a threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. She looked at Obiora with a question in her eyes, one he hadn't seen before. "Do you think someone like me could ever have more than this?" she asked quietly. Obiora reached out and took her hand. "I don't know what the future holds. But I do know you deserve better than this street." She smiled then, a real smile, the kind that lights up a room. For the first time, Obiora felt a new kind of courage stirring inside him. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way out together. That night, the sounds of Lagos slowed to a distant murmur. Obiora lay awake on the thin mattress, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't dared to speak out loud. Amarachi's question echoed in his ears, could someone like her have more? He glanced toward the small window where faint streetlights flickered like distant stars. For the first time, the city didn't feel like an enemy but a puzzle waiting to be solved. Morning came, and with it, a restless energy neither of them could explain. Over breakfast, Obiora decided to share a secret he had kept close. "I wasn't always like this," he began, careful with his words. "Back home, I went to school. I dreamed of being an engineer. But Lagos swallowed my dreams." Amarachi listened, her eyes steady. "I lost my job 2 months ago. I came here hoping to start fresh. But I'm not sure if I'm strong enough." She reached over and squeezed his hand. "You're stronger than you think," she said. "And you're not alone." That afternoon, they walked through the city together, not as strangers, but as two people learning to trust. Obiora noticed the way Amarachi's steps were light despite the weight she carried, how her eyes sometimes softened when she looked at the people around them. As dusk settled, Amarachi stopped suddenly. "There's a place I want to show you," she said. Obiora followed her through winding streets until they reached a small courtyard hidden behind an old gate. In the middle was a tree, its branches spreading wide, leaves catching the last light. Around it, a few children played, their laughter clear and bright. "This is where I come to remember," Amarachi said softly. "Where I feel like I belong." Obiora looked at her, feeling something shift deep inside. Maybe Lagos wasn't just a city to get lost in, it was a place where broken things could begin again. The courtyard felt like a quiet secret tucked away from the chaos of the city. Obiora sat on the cracked stone bench, watching the children chase one another with wide smiles and carefree shouts. Amarachi stood nearby, her eyes soft as she watched them too. "Who are they?" Obiora asked. She shrugged. "Some live here. Some come from nearby. They don't have much, but they have this place. It's their safe spot." Obiora smiled, feeling a strange warmth he hadn't felt in days. "Do you come here often?" he asked. "Whenever I need to remember who I am," she said. Obiora looked at her, the question burning inside him. "Amarachi, what is your story? You've never really told me." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I was born in Lagos, but I lost everything when I was very young. My parents, they were rich, but something happened. I don't like talking about it." Obiora stayed quiet, sensing the pain behind her words. "But now," she continued, "I'm here. And for a while, I'm just Amarachi, the girl who sits on the street. Obiora reached out and took her hand again. You're more than that. And I want to be part of your story, not just a stranger passing by. Amarachi looked at him, her eyes shimmering with something close to hope. Together, they watched the children play until the sky turned dark. For the first time, the city didn't feel so lonely. The next morning, Lagos opened its arms wide again, but this time Obiora felt a flicker of something different inside him. The city's noise still roared, but his steps were lighter, his heart a little less heavy. He found Amarachi by the corner where she usually sat, the worn bowl resting on the ground beside her. She smiled when she saw him, and without a word, handed him a small piece of bread wrapped in tissue. Obiora bit into it, savoring the simple gift. I have a plan, Amarachi said quietly, eyes bright. Obiora looked at her, curious. There's a woman who runs a small workshop nearby, she explained. She takes in people who want to learn. She's strict but fair. I think you should try. Obiora hesitated. Me? I don't know if I can. Amarachi shook her head gently. You can. You have to. That afternoon, Obiora walked toward the workshop with his heart pounding in his chest. The building was old, the paint peeling, but inside, the air smelled of fresh wood and paint. A woman with short hair and sharp eyes greeted him. You're late, she said, not unkindly. Obiora swallowed. I'm Obiora. I want to learn. She studied him for a moment. All right. Let's see what you've got. As he picked up a brush and started, Obiora felt something inside him awaken, a hope he hadn't dared touch before. Outside, Amarachi watched from the street, a small smile playing on her lips. For the first time, the future didn't seem so far away. Weeks passed, and Obiora found himself waking earlier than before, eager to learn. The workshop became a small refuge from the city's noise. The woman, Mrs. Amaka, was tough but patient, pushing him to improve every day. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Obiora left the workshop with paint-stained hands. He walked through the streets, searching for Amarachi. He found her near a small food stall, sitting on the ground with her bowl resting empty beside her. When she saw him, her tired eyes brightened. How was the workshop? She asked. Obiora smiled. Hard, but good. I think I'm getting better. Amarachi nodded, pleased. I'm proud of you. They walked together, the city's sounds swirling around them. As they passed a crowded market, Amarachi stopped suddenly. Obiora, can I tell you something? She said, her voice low. He looked at her, waiting. I wasn't always on the streets, she began, her fingers twisting nervously. Before everything happened, I had a life, a family. Obiora listened carefully. But now, she said, I don't want to be defined by what I lost. I want to be more than that. Obiora squeezed her hand. You already are. The night grew darker, but between them, a quiet light began to glow, a promise that neither of them would face Lagos alone again. The days grew shorter, but the bond between Obiora and Amarachi grew stronger. They shared small moments, a laugh over burnt rice, a quiet walk under streetlights, the comfort of knowing someone was there. One afternoon, Amarachi took Obiora to a small, dusty library tucked between two tall buildings. It was quiet, almost hidden, and smelled of old paper and dreams. This is where I come when I want to escape, she said, running her fingers along the spines of books. Books don't care about who you are or where you come from. Obiora pulled a chair and sat beside her. What do you like to read? He asked. She smiled softly. Stories about people who find themselves again. People who don't give up. Obiora looked at her, feeling the weight of those words. Maybe we can write our own story, he said. Amarachi's eyes brightened. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a question mark but a page waiting to be filled. Outside, Lagos moved on, unaware that two people were quietly building something stronger than the city itself, a hope that refused to fade. That morning, Lagos felt different. The heat came in quietly, as if even the sun didn't want to interrupt what was unfolding between Obiora and Amarachi. The streets still buzzed with shouting traders, honking danfo buses, and smoky grills, but somehow, all that noise stayed in the background of their story. Obiora was early to the workshop. Mrs. Amaka raised her brow when he walked in, sweat already gathering on his forehead. "You're serious about this," she said without looking up. "I have to be," he replied. And he meant it. Each stroke of paint, each nailed joint, each mistake and correction was part of him fighting his way back into life. He stayed behind after others had left, asking questions, practicing over and over until his hands stopped shaking. Later that evening, when the streetlights blinked on one by one, he made his way back to the familiar corner where Amarachi sat today. But tonight, she wasn't alone. A young boy stood next to her, no older than 10, barefoot and holding a torn plastic bag. Amarachi was feeding him from a small plate of rice she had probably begged for all day. Obiora stood for a moment and watched. She didn't see him right away. She was too focused on the boy, carefully blowing on the rice so it wouldn't burn his tongue. When the boy finally ran off, full and smiling, Obiora walked up. "You keep surprising me," he said quietly. Amarachi looked up, startled, then laughed. "I didn't see you there. That's Emeka. His mother died last year. He sleeps near the abandoned buses. You always take care of others, Amarachi," Obiora said. "Who takes care of you?" She was quiet for a moment. "No one really. But I'm used to that." "You're not alone anymore," he said. She met his eyes. Something flickered in hers, doubt, hope, fear. Then she stood. "Come," she said. "There's something I want you to see." They walked through the darkening city, weaving through alleys Obiora had never noticed. They passed an old mosque, a tailor's shop with gospel music playing faintly from inside, and finally reached a tall, faded building with broken windows and a crumbling staircase. Amarachi pushed open the metal gate and led him inside. The building was quiet. They climbed the stairs until they reached the 3rd floor. She stopped in front of a rusted door and tapped it 3 times in a strange rhythm. A moment later, the door creaked open. A heavy-set woman with tribal marks and a tired face peered out. "It's you," she said to Amarachi. "You came back." Amarachi nodded. Just for a moment. The woman stepped aside without another word. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a lantern. There were 5 girls inside, none older than 17. Some sat on the floor, some lay on thin mats. They looked up when Amarachi entered, their expressions shifting from surprise to quiet joy. "Who are they?" Obiora asked in a whisper. Amarachi turned to him. "They're girls I used to stay with. After I lost everything, this place became my shelter. That woman, Mama Abir, she took us in. She saved us when no one else would." Obiora looked around, his chest heavy. The room smelled of damp clothes and hope stretched too thin. Amarachi sat beside one of the girls and asked softly, "Have you eaten today?" The girl shook her head. Without a word, Amarachi opened her wrapper and pulled out 2 akara balls wrapped in paper. She placed them in the girl's hand. Obiora felt something shift in him. Not pity. Not sorrow. Something deeper. He was looking at someone who had nothing but still gave everything. As they walked home later, Obiora was quiet. "You've been through so much," he said finally. "And yet you still choose to love people. You still choose kindness." Amarachi gave a small smile. "Because I know how it feels to be invisible." Obiora looked at her. "You're not invisible to me." They reached Maman Ngozi's house just as night settled over the city. Inside, Maman Ngozi had already prepared something small, boiled yam and oil. They sat together on the floor, plates in their laps, eating slowly. Obiora glanced at Amarachi across the room, watching the way she held her spoon, how she closed her eyes between bites as if to hold on to each moment. After dinner, Obiora stepped out into the cool night air, Amarachi beside him. "I've been thinking," he said, voice low. "What if we started something? A small service. Fixing furniture, repainting shops, cleaning up. I can use what I'm learning, and maybe you can help organize people who need work. Amarachi blinked. You mean, start a business? Maybe not big at first, he said. But something honest. Something real. For us. And for the people like those girls. For a long time, Amarachi didn't speak. The idea hung between them, fragile but beautiful. Then she nodded slowly. Let's do it. And in that moment, Obiora didn't feel lost anymore. He felt found. Obiora didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, his head filled with images of worn wooden chairs, broken windows, faded walls, things people passed by, threw away, gave up on. But he didn't see junk. He saw potential. In those broken pieces, he saw what he and Amarachi had slowly become, something damaged, maybe, but still worth saving. Still worth building from. By the time morning broke, he was already outside, pacing the small compound. Mema Ngozi peeked through the curtain and frowned. You're walking like someone that wants to fight Lagos itself, she muttered, tying her wrapper. Obiora smiled. Maybe I do, Mama. She squinted at him. Don't let Lagos win, my son. But don't forget that Lagos doesn't lose easily. He nodded. Later that day, Amarachi joined him at the corner where she normally begged. But this time, her bowl was empty, not because no one gave her anything, but because she had chosen not to ask. She tucked it away in her bag and said, let's start. They didn't have a plan written out. No money. No tools. But they had Obiora's hands and Amarachi's voice. That would have to be enough. Their first stop was the mechanic's shop across the road. The place was dirty, with car parts thrown everywhere like forgotten stories. The owner, a round-bellied man named Baba Nuru, sat under a faded umbrella, chewing groundnuts. Obiora walked up to him, wiping his palms on his trousers. Good afternoon, sir. Baba Nuru looked up slowly, eyeing him from head to toe. What do you want? I heard you've got some broken benches out back. I can fix them. No charge. Just let me prove myself. Baba Nuru raised a brow. You want to fix my bench for free? Lagos has eaten your head, ABI? Obiora smiled. No, sir. Lagos just helped me find it. The man chuckled, spitting groundnut shells into the sand. Go ahead. If you spoil it, you go replace 'em. Obiora didn't wait for a second invitation. He went straight to work. His fingers remembered everything Mrs. Amaka had taught him: how to tighten weak joints, how to smooth rough edges, how to bring old wood back to life. By evening, the benches looked new. Baba Nuru stood there, blinking. Na you do this? Obiora nodded, covered in sweat and sawdust. The man whistled. You sabai work, boy. Come tomorrow. I get small table we need patching. Obiora turned to Amarachi, who had been watching silently from across the street. She grinned. That's one. They moved from street to street, asking shop owners if they had anything broken. Some laughed. Some ignored them. But a few, just a few, gave them a chance. And slowly, word began to spread. 2 weeks later, they got their first paid job. An old woman who ran a roadside akara stand wanted a fresh coat of paint on her wooden kiosk. Obiora borrowed brushes from Mrs. Amaka, and Amarachi helped mix colors with her bare hands. As they painted together, the old woman watched them. You two are not ordinary, she said, chewing cola. Your spirits are tied. I can see it. Amarachi looked away, but Obiora turned to her. Maybe she's right, he said quietly. That night, they walked home, tired but proud. Their fingers were stained with paint, their clothes ruined, but their hearts beat with something new: dignity. On the way back, they passed the small library where Amarachi liked to read. She stopped suddenly. There's something I've never told you, she said. Obiora waited. I come here not just for the books, but because someone used to meet me here. A woman. Once a week, she would come. Never said much. Just watched me read. One day she gave me a book and said, "One day you'll own more than you borrow." Then she disappeared. Obiora frowned. "Do you know who she was?" "No," Amarachi said. "But the book was about a girl who pretended to be poor, even though she was rich." Obiora's eyes narrowed. "Why would she give you that?" Amarachi's voice dropped. "I don't know. But ever since, I've wondered." She didn't finish the sentence. Back at Mama Ngozi's, they shared roasted corn and talked about the business. Amarachi suggested they give it a name. "What about something simple?" she said. "Like Hope Repairs." Obiora shook his head. "Too soft. We need something people can remember." She thought for a while. Then her face lit up. "Fix Force." Obiora paused. "I like that." And just like that, Fix Force was born, without an office, without money, without anything except a will to keep moving. By the end of the month, they had repaired 9 benches, repainted 3 kiosks, and patched 2 leaking roofs. Amarachi kept the names in a small notebook she carried around like it was made of gold. One evening, while returning from a job, they saw a group of boys harassing Emeka, the little boy Amarachi had once fed. He was crying, holding a bag of bread they were trying to snatch. Obiora didn't think. He stepped in, voice low but sharp. "Leave him." The boys hesitated. One stepped forward, flexing like he was looking for a fight. Obiora didn't move. Amarachi came beside him, calm but fierce. "Try it," she said. The boys backed off, muttering insults. Emeka ran into Amarachi's arms. That night, as they sat together on the rooftop of Mama Ngozi's house, Lagos glowing around them like fireflies caught in bottles, Obiora turned to her. "You saved me," he said. She looked at him, brow furrowed. "No. You saved yourself." "I would have stayed lost," he whispered. Amarachi leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe we both would have." And as the wind swept across the roof, they sat there, 2 people the city tried to break, now building something stronger together. Neither of them knew what was coming next. But for the first time, they weren't afraid. The sound of hammers tapping, nails clicking into place, and brushes sweeping across would become the rhythm of Obiora's life. Fix Force was growing, slowly, but with purpose. Every job they completed added a small brick to the wall they were building around their new beginning. And every time they walked into another compound with nothing but their hands and will, they proved to themselves, and to Lagos, that they were not backing down. One humid Thursday morning, Amarachi woke earlier than usual. She had barely slept. Something stirred in her chest. Not anxiety. Not fear. Something more complicated, like a door inside her was creaking open. She sat on the floor, opened her notebook, and quietly flipped through the names of all the people they had worked for. She touched each one like a prayer. On the last page, she wrote one word, home. It didn't make sense yet, but it would. She could feel it. Meanwhile, Obiora was outside in the compound, tightening a wooden chair he'd found beside a dumpster the night before. He wasn't fixing it for anyone, just for the practice. He had gotten good. Not just good, skilled. He worked fast now, neat, confident. The workshop had changed him. But Amarachi, she had transformed him. "You don't even eat before working anymore," Amarachi teased as she joined him in the compound. Obiora grinned, tightening the last screw. "Food can wait. Ideas can't." She sat beside him. "You're beginning to sound like one of those people that wear jackets in hot weather and call themselves CEOs. He laughed. "As long as I'm not wearing shades at night." A pause. "I've been thinking," Amarachi said carefully. "What if we taught other people? Like, small groups. Those boys hanging around with nothing to do. Some of those girls at Mama Rabir's place. If we showed them what we do, even just the basics." Obiora's face lit up. "Train them? Like a workshop?" "Exactly." Obiora leaned back. "We'd need space. Tools. Maybe even food for them. Where would we start?" She hesitated, then pulled out her notebook. I know a place. 3 hours later, they stood in front of an old, abandoned school building near Oberland. The place was falling apart. One side of the roof had collapsed, windows were gone, the ground was cracked. This place. Obiora raised a brow. Amarachi nodded. Yes. It's where I stayed for a while after I left Mama Beers. I remember thinking, if I ever got out, I'd come back for the ones who couldn't. They walked inside. Rats scurried, the air was thick, but the bones of the building were strong. It had once been a place of learning. It could be that again. I'll talk to Mrs. Amaka, Obiora said. Maybe she knows someone who owns the land. They spent the whole day cleaning one of the smaller rooms. Amarachi swept glass and dust while Obiora fixed up a door with scrap wood. At sunset, they stood side by side, filthy and sweating, but smiling. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. That same week, word reached Mrs. Amaka that Obiora was doing something different. She visited their new makeshift workshop with a folded arm and a quiet stare. I'm proud of you, she said simply. But don't rush. You're not just fixing wood now. You're shaping people. Then she handed him a box of second-hand tools. No charge, she added before he could argue. By the end of the week, 5 people had joined them, 3 boys and 2 girls. All of them looking for something they couldn't name. Obiora stood in front of them, nervous at first. Then he picked up a broken stool. This, he said, isn't just wood. It's a story. People gave up on it. You'll learn how to bring it back. Amarachi watched him from the back of the room, her arms crossed, heart full. In the evenings, when the last person had gone, they would sit on the steps of the broken school, eating roasted plantain and suya from a nearby vendor. Sometimes they talked about the day. Sometimes they sat in silence. But every evening felt like another thread binding them together. One night, Obiora asked softly, "Do you think we were meant to meet?" Amarachi didn't answer right away. She looked at the sky, where a plane blinked across the horizon. "I think life owed us something," she said. "Maybe this is it." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes I wonder who you were before this. Before I met you." She turned to him. "I wonder if you'd believe me if I told you." Obiora tilted his head. "Try me." But she didn't say anything. She only smiled, stood up, and said, "Tomorrow we need to get more nails." That night, she didn't sleep again. In her bag was a folded paper she had never shown anyone. It was the certificate of ownership of a 5-bedroom duplex in Ikoyi. Her name was on it. Her real name. Not the name she gave on the streets. Not the name Obiora knew. Amarachi Okafor. Her father had built the house. He was a man people feared, respected. Then he died. And everything went dark. She had walked away from that life for reasons too painful to revisit. But it was catching up now. Slowly. Quietly. And Obiora had no idea who was sitting beside him every day. But soon, he would. The rains came hard that week. Thick, heavy drops pounding the city like a warning. Lagos didn't whisper when it wanted your attention, it shouted. Obiora stood under the corrugated zinc roof of their small workshop, watching the sky split open. The wind carried dust and the sharp smell of wet concrete. Inside, the 5 students he and Amarachi had been teaching were gathered around a table, trying to stay warm. The room was full of broken furniture, hand-sketched designs, nails in repurposed jars, and the sound of laughter. Real laughter. Not the kind you force to hide hunger, but the kind that spills out when hope starts finding its voice. Amarachi was at the back, fixing the leg of a chair one of the girls had built. Her hands moved with grace, quiet, deliberate. Obiora watched her, then turned to the group. "All right," he clapped once. "Let's take a break. Who wants a kara?" 5 hands shot up. He smiled. "Come with me, then." As they all stepped into the rain, Amarachi hesitated. "I'll stay back. I want to finish this." Obiora nodded. I'll bring yours. She looked up at him. Don't forget the pepper. I never do. By the time they returned, soaked and shivering, Amarachi had finished not just one chair, but two. And she'd rearranged the room. Again. Obiora shook his head, amused. I leave for 20 minutes, you start a renovation project. She smiled without looking up. You leave too often. He froze at that. It was a small sentence, but something about it felt deeper. He moved closer, lowering his voice. Do you want me to stop leaving? She glanced up, her eyes not teasing this time. Sometimes, yes. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, the paper bag of akara in his hand, growing damp. She took the bag from him gently. Thanks, she said. That night, after the workshop emptied, they stayed behind again. The rain still hadn't stopped. Water trickled in through a crack in the roof, tapping steadily into a metal bucket. They sat on the steps, sharing a warm piece of fried yam between them. I used to hate the rain, Amarachi murmured. It reminded me of everything I didn't have: warmth, shelter, safety. Obiora looked at her. And now? She was quiet for a while. Then, now. I think I don't mind it. Not when I'm here. There was something in the way she said here that made him look harder at her. As if she was somewhere else at the same time, between two lives. He leaned forward. Amarachi. But she cut in. Let me tell you a story. He nodded. There was a girl who was born into a mansion. Everything gold, everything clean. She had everything except love. Her father was rich, strict, respected. But not kind. Her mother left when she was young. So the girl grew up in silence, in a house with too many walls and not enough warmth. Obiora didn't interrupt. She was smart. Quick. She finished school early. But every decision was made for her. What to study. Where to go. Who to talk to. What to wear. And one day, her father told her she was going to marry a man twice her age, someone from his business circle. Obiora tensed. The night before the engagement, she packed one bag. Just one. Took off all her jewelry. Changed into jeans and a hoodie. And left. He stared at her. She took public transport for the first time in her life. Slept at a park bench the first night. And then, started over. She changed her name. Told no one. Hid in the cracks of the city. A long silence. Then Obiora spoke, his voice hoarse. That girl, is you? Amarachi nodded slowly. He blinked, trying to process it. So you're from a rich home? She looked at him, carefully. Yes. Obiora stood up, took a few steps, then turned to face her. Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid of what? That you'd look at me differently. That this us would change. He ran a hand over his face, overwhelmed. Then after a while, he asked, What's your real name? Her lips trembled. Amarachi is still mine. But Amarachi Okafor. Silence again. He walked toward her. Why are you still here? Why go through all this if you could have just gone back to your life? Because that life was never mine, she said. I didn't build it. This one, I chose this. And I chose you. The words hit him like wind. He sank beside her again, hands trembling. Everything makes sense now, he said. The books. The way you carry yourself. The way you speak. You never really belonged on those streets. She shook her head. I didn't. But I was willing to stay because I thought it would keep me free. He reached for her hand. Held it. You're not alone anymore. She turned to him slowly. Neither are you. They stayed like that until the rain stopped. 2 days later, Amarachi disappeared. She left without a word. No note. No message. Nothing. Obiora searched everywhere: Mamangoz's place, the market, the library, the workshop. He even went back to the alley where they first met. No trace. Days turned into a week. The workshop dimmed. The students stopped coming. Obiora barely ate. Then, one morning, a man in a black suit knocked on the workshop door. "You're Mr. Obiora?" "Yes." The man handed him a small white envelope. Obiora opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Meet me at House 11, Le Depot Crescent, Ikoyi. Bring nothing but yourself. A.O." He read the note 5 times. Then he walked out the door. And for the first time since she left, he allowed himself to hope. Obiora didn't sleep that night. The paper trembled slightly in his fingers, like it carried its own heartbeat. He stared at the words again, lips moving without sound as he repeated them to himself. House 11. Le Depot Crescent. Ikoyi. Ikoyi. That word had always belonged to another world, one he had only seen from afar. Tall gates. Tall egos. Air-conditioned silence. Cars that purred. Men that whispered with power. And now, somehow, he had been summoned there. Not by mistake. Not by chance. By her. He woke before dawn, barely packed. Just his old shirt, jeans, and a pair of sandals Amarachi had once teased him about. No tools. No notebooks. Just himself, like she said. The ride to Ikoyi was quiet. He took a keek halfway, then a cab the rest of the way. The driver gave him a strange look when they pulled up to Le Depot Crescent, but Obiora said nothing. He was too busy feeling the weight in his chest tighten with every house number they passed. House 9. House 10. Then. House 11. He stopped breathing for a second. The gate was black, high, with golden letters painted across the top. House of Okafor. He swallowed hard. So it was real. He stepped forward and knocked. Seconds passed. Then the gate slid open without a sound. A young man in a dark grey uniform stood inside. He gave Obiora a small nod. "You're expected." Obiora stepped in slowly, eyes scanning everything. The compound was massive. Neatly trimmed hedges, interlocked stones that glistened like glass, 2 cars parked with military precision. The building itself rose like it had grown out of the ground, silent, firm, commanding. And on the balcony, leaning on the rail, was Amarachi. But this Amarachi looked like no version he had ever seen. She wore a long, olive-green dress that danced slightly in the morning breeze. Her hair was braided neatly down her back. Her skin looked rested, soft, healed. No more fake earrings. No cracked heels. She looked like who she really was. But her eyes still searched for him like they always had. She walked down slowly, not rushing. Not hiding. When they stood face to face, it was Obiora who broke the silence. "So, this is the real you." She nodded once. "Yes." He looked around. "You live here?" She tilted her head. "I used to. Before everything. And now? I don't know yet." They stared at each other. The noise of the world seemed far away. Obiora finally asked, "Why did you leave without telling me?" "I needed to face it alone," she replied. "Everything I ran from. Everything I buried. My family, my past, the life I hated. I couldn't carry you into it, not until I was sure I could breathe again." He looked away for a moment. "You didn't trust me to walk beside you?" She took a step closer. "I trusted you too much. That's why I didn't want you to carry my weight." They stood in silence again, the air thick with unsaid things. Then Amarachi whispered, "Come inside. Let me show you." He followed her into the house. Marble floors. Chandeliers. Art pieces that looked too expensive to touch. But nothing about it felt warm. Obiora's chest grew tight with every step. In the sitting room, a woman sat on a deep leather couch. Her cheekbones were sharp, her eyes sharp too, like someone who had never wasted time. She stood as they entered. "Obiora," Amarachi said, "this is my aunt. Her name is Nena. She raised me after my father passed." Nena studied him like a worn book. "You're the one she disappeared with?" Obiora stood straighter. "Yes, Ma." Nena didn't blink. You're the one who made her wear slippers and sleep on cardboard. Obiora opened his mouth, then closed it. She loved it, Nena said suddenly. That life. She said it was the first time she could breathe without asking for permission. Obiora glanced at Amarachi, who nodded softly. I didn't agree with it. I still don't, Nena continued. But now, I see it gave her something I couldn't. She came back different. Lighter. Clearer. She turned to Amarachi. Are you sure he's the one? Amarachi met her gaze. I've never been more sure of anything. Nena looked at Obiora again, then gave a single nod. Then welcome. But know this, if you ever hurt her. I won't, Obiora said firmly. I won't. Nena left the room quietly. Amarachi let out a breath she'd been holding. I didn't bring you here to scare you, she said. I brought you because I want you to know everything. All of it. Obiora looked around the room. This world, it's not mine. She stepped toward him. Then we'll build one that's ours. One that's both street and softness. Sweat and silk. One where we decide what matters. He looked into her eyes. You're sure? I'm sure. She reached into her pocket and handed him a small key. What's this? The house. It's mine now. Legally. I changed the ownership after I returned. Obiora stared at the key. I don't want to live here, she said. Not like this. Not with marble and mirrors. I want to sell it. Use the money for something real. He blinked. Like what? She smiled. Like fix force. For real this time. Big. Structured. A foundation that trains street kids in all kinds of skills. Woodwork, mechanics, tailoring, coding, everything. Obiora blinked at her, stunned. And you, she added, will run it. His hands trembled as he stared at the key again. I don't know what to say. Say yes. He looked up at her, eyes full. Yes. She hugged him tight. And for the first time since he left his village, since he wandered the streets of Lagos, Obiora felt like he had arrived. Not at a place, but at a purpose. They sat down together, shoulders touching, already drawing plans on the back of a menu sheet. And though the house stood tall and cold around them, something warm was beginning to grow. Not money. Not comfort. But legacy. And love. Hello, family. We'd love to know where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? Drop your answers in the comment.